Well, hello everyone. My name is Adrian Pace, and I'm very pleased to be able to welcome you to this webinar on sustainable electrification solutions for developing countries by Christopher Hopper, who lives in the UK, I believe. Nowadays, people tend to be electronic entities. So, Christopher, I hope you do live in the UK. I assume you do. And Christopher is from a startup called BBOX Limited, which came about as a result of a student-led initiative, which is also still ongoing at Imperial, and that's called Equinox. And this webinar is brought to you by the IEEE through the Humanitarian Technology webinar series. So, the Humanitarian Technology webinar series, just to remind you, it's free and it's publicly available. So please, by all means, invite your friends and colleagues to come along and to learn and to engage on humanitarian activities. And the focus is basically on applying technology to solve the world's most pressing humanitarian and development challenges, which has become a key priority for IEEE as an organization. We have a team behind this series, and this team is made up of volunteers from all over the world. You can see their names on this slide here. And we're supported by staff who are based in New Jersey. And Steve Welsh, we're grateful to you for your support, as well as to Tara and Jill and everyone else who's involved in this series and in making it happen. So right now we have 24 participants, I see, and it would be great just to get a feel of where you're from and who you work for, perhaps. If you could just enter your name and location in the chat window on the left-hand side, that would be really great. During the webinar, you're welcome to ask questions for Chris in the same window as well. And I will choose a selection of questions at the end, and Chris can answer them for you. But he'll deal with the questions right at the end. Remember that you can receive credits for listening to this webinar. You can go to humanitarian.ieee-elearning.org to get your certificate of completion, and that'll give you 0.1 CEUs or 1 PDH. And I'm pleased to say that we have quite a few different webinars which are planned coming up. And these webinars are actually all confirmed. The one after this is on the 14th of July, and that is entitled Teabag Water Filter by Professor Eugene Kluter, who's from the University of Stellenbosch in South Africa. His work was actually featured on the BBC. And if you go to Google and if you type in Teabag water filter BBC, you'll be able to find the article. And it's a very inventive application that they've developed. The idea is basically that in the developing world, tap water is often not safe to drink. So this idea is to have a filter which fits on your bottle, and so that you can drink, so that it filters the water, makes it safe to drink. The next one on 16th of August is on the Engineering for Change, which is basically an online community which was launched at the beginning of this year through a partnership between the IEEE, the ASME, which is the American Society for Mechanical Engineers, and Engineers Without Borders. If you go to engineeringforchange.org, you can find out more about this tool, and by all means, please register over there, and you'll get a very comprehensive talk about the tool and the intent of the tool and how to use it on the 16th of August. The one after that is actually from a group of really quite enthusiastic students who've they've graduated and they've dedicated their time towards developing an application to use radio waves to send data. Because in the developing world, a lot of people do have radios, and it's a great way to communicate with them and to send data to them. So this is by this group of students from One Beep, is what they've called themselves. And then on the 20th of October, we'll actually have a webinar straight out of rural Zambia by IEEE member Fretian van Stam. And his work was also featured on the BBC, on BBC Click, which you can also watch via the Humanitarian website. I understand that some of you might not be IEEE members, and you might like to consider becoming an IEEE member. There are plenty of opportunities. Please visit the IEEE website at ieee.org to find out more. And now, without much further ado, I'd like to introduce today's speaker. Christopher Hopper is a co-founder and the outgoing chairman of Equinox, as well as a partner at BBOX Limited. He has spent the last year developing a solution for rural electrification in developing countries, and he is very passionate about technology and how it can be used to benefit people all over the globe. For his achievements in the field of rural electrification, he has received several awards, including the IEEE Student Humanitarian Supreme Award and the IEEE President's Change the World Competition 2010. I also believe that Equinox also was a finalist in the Shell BBC competition, which was held last year. And finally, Christopher is currently studying electrical and electronic engineering and is in his final year. So, Christopher, it's over to you to talk about sustainable electrification solutions.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Adrian, for the kind introduction. Welcome to my webinar. Let me also very briefly introduce myself. As you heard, I'm Christopher. I'm currently a final year student at Imperial College London. Just about to finish my exams, actually. I'm going to graduate this year. I'm a founding member and former chairman of Equinox, and you'll hear plenty of Equinox today. I'm also a partner of BBOX Limited, which is the first spin-off company of Equinox. What I'm going to tell you today are four main areas. Number one, what is the problem we're trying to tackle? Then I'm going to move on to what is Equinox and what have we done so far. Number three is the Energy Kiosk, which is basically the solution we developed. And number four, what lessons have we learned and where are we going in the future? So let me start with introducing the problem. And the problem is indeed quite a big one. 1.6 billion people in the world don't have access to electricity. That's roughly 1 in 4. And whenever I look at this picture, which is obviously the Earth by night, I'm always astonished by just how dark some areas are. So if you just look at Africa, there's barely any light at night except for larger coastal cities. And electricity is really important. It's quite easy to forget that. Let me start by telling you what we found people use electricity for in rural areas, in this case in Africa mainly, but I assume it's similar in different countries. Number one application would be lighting. Currently a lot of people rely on kerosene lamps to light their homes at night. Number two is mobile phone charging. 3 is radios, which is the main source of information in rural communities. And then small appliances such as hair clippers. So we had a couple of people come up to us and ask us whether they could start small businesses around our batteries. So the lady you see on the right, she uses the battery to provide lighting for her bar. Another person came and she wanted to open a barber shop and run his hair clippers on it. So it's really an enabling technology. And there are a variety of positive secondary effects. Number one is health. As I mentioned, a lot of people use kerosene lamps for lighting their homes. And that not only is a major fire hazard, but also the World Bank estimates that there's 1.6 million deaths worldwide due to indoor air pollution from kerosene. Also, they estimate that 780 million people in the developing world are exposed to kerosene fumes equivalent of 2 packs of cigarettes per day. So you can, just from those figures, see just how big the problem is. Also, education. In Rwanda, at 6 p.m. the sun sets and it's pitch black afterwards. So basically, students can't study after 6 o'clock because they don't have any good light to study. Again, providing efficient LED lighting can solve that problem. Electricity also benefits the local economy. Again, by extending working hours into the evening, but also in our case, we're trying to price our solutions so that people are actually better off with our solution compared to what they spend on their energies previously, which is actually quite a lot in some cases. They spend a lot of money on kerosene, on candles, on batteries for their torches, and that sort of thing. And then last but not least is communication. As I mentioned, that includes the radio, which is the main source of information from the outside, but also, very interestingly, mobile phones. The graph on the right, the red line, shows you the number of mobile phone users in Africa per 100 inhabitants. And you can kind of see the exponential growth in the last roughly decade. Now this graph only goes up to 2008, but the number as of September last year was that there's over 500 million mobile phone subscriptions in Africa, which has a population of around 1 billion. So this number has now gone past 50, and the growth continues. And with this growth, obviously, there's also a high demand of electricity for which there's no infrastructure in place, particularly in the rural areas. So in this slide, this is a picture I took my first trip to Rwanda 2 years ago, and for me it kind of symbolizes the importance of providing electricity and lighting to those areas. So we were on our way back from serving different villages, and we saw a house with light coming from it. So we just stopped, we knocked, we asked whether we could go in, and they welcomed us. And this is basically what we saw. And I took a picture. And I also took a second picture with flash. And I'm sure you can notice the difference. So this is the exact same scene. And for me personally, this just symbolizes how important lighting and electricity is, and how much we in the West take it for granted. So, what is Equinox? What are we about? What have we done so far? Our mission is stated in one short sentence. Our aim is to provide sustainable, scalable, and economically viable solutions for rural electrification in developing countries. Number one, sustainable is very important. That's a strong focus of ours. We want to make sure any system we put in place stays there for a long time and benefits the community for a long time. Then scalability is very important because we want to impact as large a number of people as possible. And economic viability is often overlooked, but also plays a big part in scalability and sustainability. And obviously we focus on rural areas. There's three main aspects to Equinox, just to put it into context so you know where we're coming from and what kind of framework we work under. Number one is education. So Equinox is entirely student-run by students from Imperial College London. We have first-year students all the way to PhD students from a variety of different departments. A lot of students from electrical engineering, but everything from physics to computing and aeronautics even. Also, we partner with the Kigali Institute of Science and Technology and the local students there. We try to involve them at every step of the way. And And when we go out to implement the projects, there's several benefits to that. Number one, we have someone we can rely on to interface with the local population to get a better understanding of the issues involved and to communicate. But also we want there to be some kind of knowledge transfer between us and them. We also started to register them as a local charity, and we hope that they will implement their own projects maybe from next year onwards. The second point is innovation. Electrification in these areas is something that hasn't really consistently been solved yet. So there's a high need for new solutions, and we've developed one, but every year we improve on that, and then we go and implement it and test it out on the ground. So there's really a cycle of kind of incremental improvement and implementation. So why did we pick Rwanda to implement our projects? If you look at the statistics of a population of 10 million people, less than 10% have access to electricity. Close to 90% of people live in rural areas. So you see there's a high correlation between whether you live in a city and whether you have access to electricity. Also, 2/3 of the population live closer than 5 kilometers from the national grid. And that has quite an important implication that I'm going to talk about in a bit. So just to give you a brief history of Equinox, everything started in May 2008 with just an idea. There was a bunch of students from electrical engineering, and we felt like we should be doing something tangible. We felt we learned a lot of valuable knowledge in the classroom, a lot of theoretical knowledge, but we felt there should be some way for us to apply that knowledge to benefit people. So the idea actually came about through a YouTube video, and discussion started from there. We all went back over summer, but we kept in touch, and when we came back in September, we established Equinox. And we started having regular meetings, and we also went out to talk to different organizations in the field to understand what had been done, what worked well, what didn't work well, what we could learn from that. Then in January 2009, we did our first trip to Rwanda, where we met local organizations, including the Kigali Institute of Science and Technology and the Belgian Technical Corporation, who we still work with until now on our kiosks. And also we conducted surveys in different villages and selected a village for implementation of our first kiosk, our first pilot project. So we came back in September, and we implemented that first kiosk in Minazwi. So that's the top arrow you can see. That one's solar powered with roughly 450 watt peak generation capacity, and it benefits 50 households. We had quite a positive response on that, and we came back to Rwanda in January last year to prepare for the implementation of 2 new kiosks in September. So last September we built another solar powered kiosk in Bugesera and a grid connected kiosk in Kamumi. Now, when I mentioned a grid connected kiosk, a lot of people ask me, why do you put a grid connected kiosk there where there's the grid anyways? But if you think back to the last statistic I gave you, there's a huge number of people that live close to the grid that don't actually have access to the grid, and there's a variety of reasons, and sometimes they live close but not close enough. Sometimes they can't afford the connection fee to the grid. So our idea is to basically, if you put grid-connected kiosks, which are very cheap compared to solar kiosks and very scalable as well, if you put them along the grid, you can extend the reach of the grid and can reach a large part of the population. And then for those who really live in rural areas, you can put solar kiosks or hydro-powered kiosks and that sort of thing. So that's kind of if you think on a larger scale. This January, a team went back to Rwanda again to prepare new projects for this year, which I'm going to tell you about later. So also very exciting. Oh, sorry, there's a question I see here. WP means what peak for solar panels. BBOX Limited is a UK-based company that was founded by Equinox alumni last year, and it commercially produces electrification solutions for developing countries. And there's currently operations in Rwanda, Pakistan, and China. And it's very exciting to have our first startup spin-off company. And Equinox works very closely with BBOX to achieve that common goal. So, what's our solution, the Energy Kiosk? The Energy Kiosk is a shop that sells energy. In the case of a solar kiosk, it'd be a shop with solar panels on the roof. We have centralized power generation, which has the advantage that you make better use of panels compared to putting an individual panel in every house in the village. And also you have decentralized power distribution, which circumvents infrastructure costs that you would have if you put, for example, a microgrid in place. For distribution, we have developed a concept that we call the battery box, and I'll introduce that in a bit. What's also important to note about the Energy Kiosk is that it's very flexible on the input side, so you could run it off solar panels, you can have a hydro-powered kiosk, you can run it on the grid, you could have a biogas kiosk. You're really not limited on the input side. Very important, and probably the hardest part to get right, is the business model. So I talked before about sustainability, and we strongly believe that we have to take a business approach to the whole solution. And this is not for us to make money, but rather to have the whole thing run by itself. So what are the requirements for the business model? Basically, you have to pay your bills first. You have a shopkeeper that runs the kiosk and maintains the kiosk, so the salary has to be paid. The maintenance costs, and obviously depreciation of the equipment. So every piece of equipment has a lifetime associated with it, and after that you have to replace that part of equipment, and that has to be factored into the business model. And after all that is paid, we would even like to see a small profit in the kiosk. And I realize that profit might sound a bit evil in this context, but it's not meant to be profit that we take back home, take out of the kiosk to London or anywhere. Rather, it's a surplus in the kiosk that can be then reinvested in the community. So, for example, you can invest any surplus to expand the system to benefit more people. So that's what I'm talking about in this context. And how to structure it? There are several ways. Number one, there will be a deposit. For people, when people enter the system, they will have to make a small down payment, just to kind of prevent them from running off with the batteries. And then there's two options: either you put in place a pay-per-recharge model or a pay-monthly model. There's benefits to both. The pay-per-recharge model is actually, we found, is very well accepted, and because people, the way they currently buy the energy is, so the way they currently buy kerosene is they go to the shop with a small Fanta bottle, and they fill the Fanta bottle up with kerosene because that's all they can afford at a given time, and they take it back home and they use it for their lighting. And when it runs out, they save up again and they go again and buy new kerosene. So the pay-per-recharge model really mimics that kerosene model, and it's very easy to understand. It's very intuitive, and it's well accepted. The pay-monthly model is a bit more difficult. On the other hand, it's more desirable from the kiosk perspective because you get a steady cash flow. The technical design of the kiosk, in this case of a solar kiosk, you obviously have the solar panels on the roof, and here sizing is crucial. So you don't want to oversize the system because then you have a lot of cost, which is going to make the system less affordable, and you're frankly just wasting energy. If you undersize it, you can't charge all the batteries that come in from the customers. So it's really, we really have to find the right size for the panels on the roof. And this actually proves to be not very easy, because it's hard to estimate the load profile of the users, so what people actually use electricity for and how much do they then use it once they have it. So sizing is an important issue. Then solar charge controllers, they charge the storage batteries to make better use basically of the electricity generated, that we then run off inverters off them, and a range of lead-acid charge controllers to charge our battery boxes. That's the rough system. And if you can look at the picture, you'll also see that the left and the right, they're completely identical, and they're also independent of each other. So if one side goes down or breaks for whatever reason, the other side can still operate. So robustness is another important aspect. Some of you might notice that it's not the most efficient technical design, but it's a very cost-efficient one, and that's a very important factor to take into consideration. So, as I mentioned, the distribution is done through battery boxes. So this on the right is the first version we built. These were actually all hand-built by us. And they have 12 amp hour sealed gel-based lead-acid batteries. They have a custom-built low-voltage disconnect circuit to prevent the batteries from over-discharging and thereby extending the lifetime of the battery. And they have two 12-volt DC outputs, and they're very portable. You can't see it in the picture, but there's obviously a lid with them, and there's a handle on the lid, so it's quite easy to carry. The second generation battery box was commercially produced by BBOX. They have 5 amp hour gel-based lead-acid batteries. They're cheaper than the old version, more portable. Again, have a low voltage disconnect. What's important in this version now is that they have a 230 volt AC output. So it's virtually like you're carrying around a socket. We call it a socket in your pocket. And people can take it home and use anything they want on it, as if they had grid electricity. Also, we introduced an external fuse to make it easier to switch the fuse, and thereby, making maintenance easier. Oops. The future version of the BB5, which is going to be in place this year, is similar to the old one, except there's going to be a dual 12-volt DC output, so people can run LED lights on them more efficiently. Also, the inverter is improved to consume less power, so the whole design is aimed to just give longer battery life. Very important in sustainability is local involvement. Local buy-in is a crucial aspect of that, and there are several ways of doing that. Number one, local authorities. So particularly in Rwanda, local authorities always need to be informed of what's going on in their district, and it's important to have their approval. So we make sure that's the case, and we make sure we have their support. That also makes it much easier on convincing people to give the system a try and working rate in general. Number two, microfinance. In close to every kiosk we have, there's a microfinance institution, and we use that to keep our accounts. So we have an account with microfinance where the shopkeeper pays in the charging fees, and once a month he has the right to withdraw his salary. Also, we always have an agreement in place with the microfinance organization that potential customers that get interested in the system, they can take a credit for the deposit. So basically, it was very important to us that we, by introducing the deposit, we didn't want to leave anyone out of the system, right? So anyone now can enter the system and get their deposit finance through the microfinance organization. Then the shopkeeper is always a local person who's trained by us, and that's also very important to have, to have him know the people there and have an understanding of how everything works. And then there's follow-up missions conducted by a fellow students from KISP. So far we have 3 energy kiosks in place with a capacity to serve over 300 households. The first one was built in Minazi, as I mentioned, in 2009. Solar powered, and we upgraded it once. So initially it was 50 households, now it's up to 120 households, and we increased the generation capacity to 600 watt peak. We have a dual system in place, a pay-per recharge model for the old batteries and a monthly payment model for the new batteries. To give you an idea of the prices, it's fairly similar. I think it's the same across all 3 kiosks. A deposit would be 5,000 Rwandan francs, which translates to roughly 5 British pounds, so I believe it's like $8–9 US. And that's refundable. If people want to leave the system, they can, at any time, they can just bring back the battery and get their deposit back. Then a pay-per recharge, I believe, was around 600 francs, which is roughly $1. And the monthly payment would be roughly $3 a month. Then the second kiosk in Kamungi is a grid-connected kiosk. I talked about the concept earlier that can serve up to 120 households. Here we have monthly payments in place. And last but not least, the Bugesera, our second solar-powered kiosk in the southern province, quite close to Burundi, also solar-powered with 600 watt peak generation capacity. So, what are the lessons? What have you learned? And then where are we going from there? Number one, it's important to design for extreme affordability. These are all solutions for what's called the bottom of the pyramid, and it's a very price-sensitive market. So any technical design has also have to take into account costs, and affordability. The whole system has to be affordable. There's no way around that. Sustainability is crucial. As I mentioned, it can be done on the business side, for one, and also through local involvement. The more buy-in you have from the locals, the better the system will run. Also, user profiles. By that I mean there's, even among people in rural areas, there's quite a lot of different demands for electricity. So for some people it's enough to have simple light at night for half an hour before they go to bed while they cook. Others, they have several lamps in their house, and they want to also listen to the radio half the day. So it's crucial, but it's also very hard to estimate the load profile of the user, especially since you don't know, even if you knew how much to use energy now, what are their energy needs once you give them access to electricity. Diversification is probably something we'll have to move towards in the future, just to accommodate different user needs. The business model is the toughest part of the whole system, and there needs to be still more improvement on that. Again, the goal would be to make it as affordable for people as possible, while still making the whole system robust. And the main lesson, though, to take away is just how high the demand for these kind of solutions is, especially due to the mobile phone growth the last decade. So that's just incredible. Everywhere we go, people, they're really desperate for electricity and energy. The future, what is Equinox going to do this year and the next years? Equinox is planning to build 3 new energy kiosks. One of them is going to be hydro-powered. It's a new concept we're trying out. Obviously, hydropower is very attractive because it gives you power around the clock, and it's relatively cheap. So another solar-powered kiosk we're building for a UN habitat settlement in southern Rwanda. And also we're building another solar-powered kiosk for a school in Tanzania. Also, we're going to go back to the old kiosks. We're going to survey, see what's going well, see what's not going so well, and improve them, both on the technical side and on the business model side. As I mentioned, we'll probably move towards diversification of our solutions, try out different solutions, see how people respond, and if it's positive, we'll probably implement something. That's really the biggest issue, that there's not much data on people in rural areas in the developing world, and it probably varies a lot as well. And then we're going to do some further research. We're always looking at new solutions, different technologies, and trying to come up with new ideas. So in conclusion, I want to put a little caveat there. What I presented here is work in progress. So this is not yet a fully fledged blueprint solution, but that's something we're working towards. So every time we go out, we put something into place, we analyze it, we look at it, and then we improve it. And we're really working towards having some kind of solution which can easily be replicated in the future, hopefully in a couple of years' time. But I think we'll see a lot of development in the field. It's very exciting, and a lot of stuff going on. So I'm very positive about that. So thank you for listening. We still have some time for questions. But before I hand over to Adrian for the questions, I have a small favor to ask. Equinox is a finalist in the JP Morgan Give It Away Challenge, where JP Morgan gives away $50,000 US to a charity of your choice. So if you could follow the link and vote for us, that would be great. Also feel free to spread the link around. The deadline is this Friday, and we're very close to first place. So thanks a lot, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions.
All right, thanks a lot, Chris. That was a great presentation, and we're very grateful that you presented this very interesting project and an idea to us. I think what impresses me the most about what you guys have done is, firstly, it was student-led, and you have a great structure behind you, where you have a student organization, and you pass on the project to students who come and go from year to year. And so it's very sustainable in that sense, your organization. Secondly, what also impressed me is that, well, you're from an electrical engineering department, which is a very technical department in itself. But you all clearly recognized certain needs in communities, especially in the developing world, and you went about trying to apply your skills to solve real challenges for people in need, and also recognized as well, I think, some of the lessons you learned, spoke a lot about the fact that technical issues, while they are fundamental to making your kiosk work, in fact they're secondary, because you have to consider the issues of affordability, of sustainability, of local involvement, the business model. So there's so many other issues apart from just the core technical issue, and it's those, it's taking account of all of those factors that lead to successful solutions. So it was really, really very impressive. So if I look at the questions, there are basically 3 or 4 different categories of questions that have come up. The first was to do with the ownership and the business model behind Equinox's solutions. The second category of questions was to do with sort of the scaling up of these solutions and how standardized these kiosks are and how easy they are to to roll out in other communities around the world. And the third category of questions that came up was mainly to do with the technical aspects, so to do with the maintenance, to do with the battery life and the like. And the fourth, there was one question regarding involvement, to do with opening discussions on how to roll this out in other countries. So Chris, if you're ready, I will start with the first question, and this is to do with the ownership issue. And there's a number of questions. I'll ask you, well, this first: who owns Equinox in Rwanda, firstly, and secondly, who actually owns the kiosk and who builds it? So Chris, over to you.
To answer your question, the kiosk currently, it depends what you mean by the kiosk. The system we have in place currently is that we have an agreement with a local district in each one of our kiosks, and they provide the building for us. And Equinox pays for and brings in the equipment. So we own the electrical equipment, and they own the kiosk. This was also an attempt to have a local buy-in and thereby making the whole thing more sustainable.
Okay, and how about the shopkeeper? So is the shopkeeper actually employed by Equinox, and do you pay the shopkeeper a salary? Is that how it works? Does Equinox pay the shopkeeper salary directly?
So that's kind of right. The shopkeeper is employed by us, but his salary is paid from the proceeds of the kiosk. So that includes that's basically the recharge fees that people pay either on a pay-per recharge basis or on a monthly basis. So that money goes into the microfinance organization, into our accounts, and we have a contract agreed with them that the shopkeeper can go once a day and once a month and withdraw his salary. And I saw a question in the chat window earlier that asked how much the salary is. I guess that depends a lot where you go. Even in Rwanda it varies a bit, and it's probably different for other countries, but in the Rwandan case we found that I think it was between 55,000 and 65,000 was a good starting salary. So we talked to our students from KIST, we talked to the local authority to kind of judge how much we should pay the shopkeeper, what would be an appropriate salary. And that would translate to roughly 60 British pounds per month, which is not much in European terms, but it's not a bad salary over there. So back to you, Adrian. So
typically, where do you get your funding of the equipment from? And in your experience, is your solution, once you've done these capital kind of investments of the equipment, is it quite sustainable? And are you able to actually make profits? And how, you mentioned that they're plowed back in the community, but in what way are they plowed back into the community? And is it used to sort of build more energy kiosks, or is it actually used for other things in the community?
So currently we're still at quite an early stage. Our first kiosk is only 1.5 years old, so there's not much excess profit, and we also will start seeing equipment that needs to be replaced probably in 1-2 years times. But especially the first kiosk in Minazi is actually looking quite promising. We're running well, I wouldn't say profit there, but we're making more money than we're paying the shopkeeper by quite a bit. A lot of this money, however, will go towards repairs. So once the batteries reach the end of their lifetime, they need to be replaced. So the whole thing is still a bit of a research project, and we'll know that in a couple of years. But it's looking quite promising.
Okay, cool. So I have a question here, which actually also comes from straight from the African bush, from the village of Macha in Zambia, from Katian Van Stam, who lives there, and he asks, what is the average usage per household, and what would be covered by that usage, and what is the scaling up plan? Now, I do take it from what you said, that you're in a relatively early stage, but do you have any ideas at this time about scaling up in terms of how standardized is your solution? So I've asked you quite a lot there. Firstly, the first question is, what's the average usage per household? How much is it being used? And the second one is, what would be your scaling up plan? So over to you.
Like I mentioned, it's hard to estimate the average use. I think there's three real groups. One is the very moderate users that are usually the poorest. They just need a light for half an hour per day while they cook and before they go to bed. Then there's average users. They have probably a cell phone and use the light for 2-3 hours a day. And then there's heavy users, and that would also include small businesses such as shops. So I think that's really the three groups you have to cater for. With the new batteries we have next year, or this year actually, a regular user that would use light and maybe a couple of phone charges per week should be able to last a week on one of those battery boxes. So he'd come back weekly to recharge. About scaling up, all the projects are still quite in an early stage. So I think, in my opinion, more research needs to be done, more evaluation needs to be done, and still there needs to be a bit more refinement, and maybe 1, 2, 3 years down the line we can think about scaling up. So Equinox is very much of a R&D type project, and every year we learn new things. Okay,
cool. And on this issue of of your project and on ownership and scaling and the like, I have a question, and that is how do you ensure community involvement in Rwanda right now? In terms of how do you ensure, for example, that batteries don't go missing? I think you alluded to it in your presentation, but I do understand that there is sort of a political environment in a village as well. You've got to have buy-in from the people. You've got to have buy-in from maybe the chief of the village, and being a foreign organization essentially. How did you ensure that you have that kind of buy-in locally?
That's why I mentioned just before we even implement the project, usually when we survey different villages, we always visit the local government, local authorities, and we talk to them, see what they think of it, whether they approve, and usually they do. So we involve them at a very early stage of the process to ensure that we have their buy-in. And then usually we also ask them to provide us some kind of house or a room for where we can implement the kiosk. Also, we haven't had much of an issue with theft of our boxes. Although there was one case last year where one person stole 2 batteries, but that's everything that happened in the last 2 years. Other than that, it hasn't been a big issue. Recently, we had an issue coming up with people black charging our boxes, so not coming back with going somewhere else to recharge them, which obviously isn't the point, since we try to recover the cost over the lifetime. So that's something we're going to address now when we go back to Rwanda in 2 months' time. So that's going to be a strong focus of ours. So there's like little bits and pieces that still need to be improved. That's what I'm saying. It's not quite there yet to scale it up, but 2 years down the line, when we learn from that, when we reacted to that, I think we will have a good solution.
So I take it that you actually rent out these batteries, Chris, as opposed to people purchasing it, or do they pay installments and eventually own these batteries, or how does it work? Because I imagine if they pay installments, by the time they pay for it completely, the battery life might be completely over. So if you could answer that question.
Sure. The fundamental idea behind the kiosk model is that we take out what's really the biggest hurdle to these people having electricity, and that's usually the high initial investment. So a lot of people in Rwanda don't starve. They usually live off their own crops they grow, but they don't have much disposable income, and it fluctuates a lot, through the seasons, whether the harvest was good or not. And they frankly don't have much cash to purchase a regular solar system. So we take out that barrier by providing them with the equipment, and then we recover the cost over the lifetime of the system. But also what we do is we provide more than that. It's more of a service, really. So people, they pay for the system, but they always have a right to a working battery. So they never own it. It always stays the ownership of the kiosk, but if anything breaks or if the battery reaches the end of its lifetime, it will be replaced by the kiosk and the customer doesn't have to worry. So it's really more of a service that's provided by the kiosk.
Okay, good. And I think we can go on to some of the, let's say, the more technical questions now. Let's have a look here. I think you answered how long the batteries can hold the charge. There's a question regarding maintenance requirement on the system. How much involvement is there from local people in maintenance, and have you had to train a lot of people, or is it just the shopkeeper that you train who does the maintenance, and has that been quite easy, or has it been quite challenging to upskill local people if you train them?
I would say it hasn't really been too much of an issue. I mean, the maintenance involved is not rocket science. People don't need to know how to design a circuit board in order to be able to repair a battery box. So, having said that, we still spend quite a bit of time training the shopkeeper in all aspects of the system, including safety. And now also, since BBOX was founded, Equinox and BBOX have been working very strongly together in order to ensure that kind of sustainability on the maintenance side. So BBOX is now running a shop in the small assembly line in Kigali. So we have local people there who are trained. They know how to assemble the boxes and they know how to repair the boxes. So that allows us also to bring back any broken boxes from the kiosk and repair them there and replace them very easily and quickly.
Okay, good. Let me just have a look at some other questions here. One of them is there an existing infrastructure for photovoltaic technology in Rwanda? I mean, is it easy to access parts, replacements, technical know-how? Or is Equinox a bit of a trailblazer?
There are a few things. There's a couple of solar retailers, mainly in Rwanda. But again, everything is imported in Rwanda anyways. And then there's also some retailers that focus on solar lighting. So that's usually small solar lanterns that you put out during the day, and then at night you have light in your house. But that's fundamentally quite different to what we're trying to do. Our goal is really to provide a electric grid substitute to people. So lighting is an aspect of it, but it's not everything. So that's really one thing that sets us apart. And I would say in that field we're quite unique, at least in Rwanda, but I haven't heard of many people doing that elsewhere.
Okay, I see we have a couple of minutes left, so I don't want to keep everyone longer than that. So I'll just ask one or two more questions. One of them here is, we see a lot of hanging wires. Are they for mobile charging? How do you deal with people wanting to charge the mobile battery without the mobile? Who don't have a mobile, I think. That's what he's saying.
A lot of wires where? And why would you charge a...
I think it was in the kiosk. There was a photo you showed with a lot of wires hanging. So, hang on.
Is it? The kiosk?
Yeah, that one. Hang on. This one here. What's
okay.
That over there? Those are all the batteries, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Basically, it's just an extension plug, and you can see the individual chargers plugged in. And they look like mobile phone chargers, but they're basically chargers for batteries. This was basically a trade-off. When we designed the system, we looked at solar charge controllers, which were quite expensive, and we found that stepping it up to 240 volts AC and using small mobile phone type, plug-in chargers for the batteries made more sense from a cost perspective. So that's the wires you see hanging down there. That's the charger plugged into the socket up there, and then going down to the individual batteries.
Okay, I can't remember if I asked you this one already because I was reading it, so I can't remember if you gave the answer, so excuse me if you did. But Farhad asks, how do you handle the recycling of the batteries? Because they could be quite poisonous when disposed. So I'll ask you this question, if you could give a quick answer to this, and then I'll ask you one more question, and then we're done.
Well, since the batteries always remain in possession of the kiosk, we can monitor them, and when they reach the end of their life, we can then recycle them. In that aspect, it's also important that we work very closely with BBOX. So we really, BBOX has a shop in Kigali, where Equinox can bring the depleted batteries, and BBOX takes care or helps Equinox recycle the batteries. So there's really, since we don't give the batteries away, people can always bring them back, and we make sure they're properly recycled so that they're not dumped in the environment.
Right, okay, one more question Farhad also asks is, how can we open a discussion to expand this to other countries such as Ghana? We're leaving for Ghana in a month to build a school that needs electricity. That's what he asks.
I'll say just drop us an email. I'll type it in the chat window. It's info@equinox.org. Just drop us an email. We're happy to talk and help you with your projects.
Okay, great. I see it's 1 minute past the hour or 31 minutes past the hour, depending on where you are. It's been a really great session. I mean, we've had people from all over the world literally attending this. If I look here, we've had people from Seattle, from India, from Glamorgan, from Florida, we've had Orlando, Tunisia, the village of Macha in Zambia, and a number of other places throughout the US and Europe, from Switzerland, and of course from the Netherlands, where I'm based. Christopher, we're really grateful for your presentation, and Christopher is an example of an IEEE member who is really active in this space. And we're very proud to have IEEE members like this who are doing really great work to try to develop appropriate solutions in the developing world. So with that, I'd also like to invite you to go back to the Humanitarian website, the e-learning website, at a later date, and you can download your certificate for attending this webinar, which is good for continuing education credits. And also, the webinar will be available for downloading on iTunes, as well as on our Facebook page and on YouTube. The webinars are archived on YouTube as well, and they should be up there within a few days' time. If you've not joined our Facebook page, then please do so. You can type in IEEE Humanitarian Technology Webinar Series in Facebook, and please like our page, and then you'll also get updates, as well as within the page all the webinars are available for immediate viewing. So once again, thanks, Christopher, and I wish all of you a great day or evening or morning or whatever time of the day it is, wherever you are. And please join us for our upcoming webinars in the coming months. Thank you, take care, and goodbye.
Bye.